Everything alive is supposed to follow the same rule. You're born, you grow up, you grow old, and eventually you die. It's the one promise nature makes to every living thing on this planet. Except there's a single creature, smaller than your fingernail, that seems to have found a loophole. When it should be dying, it does something no other animal can. It turns back the clock, rewinds its own body to the beginning, and starts its entire life over again. It's called the immortal jellyfish, and what scientists are learning from it could change how we understand aging itself. Let's get one thing clear right away, because it sounds too wild to be true. This animal, known as Turritopsis dohrnii, can essentially reverse its own aging. Not slow it down, reverse it, and it doesn't do this just once. Under the right conditions, it can do it again and again and again. In theory, there may be no natural limit to how many times it can restart, which raises a staggering question. Is this tiny creature drifting through the Mediterranean actually capable of living forever? To understand how that's even possible, we have to look at how it lives. And to do that, let's start where every jellyfish starts. Most jellyfish follow a one-way journey through life, just like us. It begins with an egg, which becomes a tiny larva. That larva settles onto the seafloor and grows into something called a polyp, a little stalk anchored in place. From that polyp, the free-swimming jellyfish you'd recognize eventually buds off and floats away into the open water. It matures, it reproduces, and then, like nearly every animal that has ever existed, it dies. That's the end of the line. But the immortal jellyfish refuses to accept the end of the line. Here's what happens. When this jellyfish is injured, or starving, or simply getting old, it doesn't just fade away. Instead, it pulls off something almost unbelievable. It contracts its body, sheds its tentacles, and sinks down to the seafloor. There, it collapses into a small blob of tissue called a cyst, and then, within a day or two, that blob reorganizes itself entirely and transforms back into a polyp. The exact same early life stage it came from. It has effectively hit the reset button on its own existence. Stop and think about what that actually means. Imagine a butterfly that, instead of dying, could melt back into a caterpillar and begin its whole life again. That's essentially what this jellyfish does. And scientists have a name for the process that makes it possible: transdifferentiation. Now here's why that word matters so much, because this is where it gets truly mind-bending. In most animals, once a cell becomes a specific type, it's locked in. A muscle cell stays a muscle cell. A nerve cell stays a nerve cell. There's no going back. But in the immortal jellyfish, that rule breaks down. During transdifferentiation, its fully grown, specialized cells can transform into completely different kinds of cells. A muscle cell can become a nerve cell. The body essentially rewrites its own instructions, taking mature tissue and reprogramming it into whatever it needs to build a fresh start. Almost nothing else in the animal kingdom can do this so completely. And that's exactly why researchers are so fascinated. Because here's the connection that makes this more than just a strange ocean fact. That process of cells changing their identity? It's closely related to what happens in human stem cells, the special cells that can become different tissues in our bodies. Human aging is tied, in large part, to our cells slowly losing their ability to repair and renew themselves. Damage builds up over time, things break down. But this jellyfish seems to have cracked the code on cellular renewal. So scientists are studying it not because they think we'll one day melt into blobs and reset ourselves, but because it might reveal the biological secrets of regeneration. And that could matter for treating age-related disease, healing injuries, maybe even understanding cancer. But here's where it gets even deeper. What is it inside this jellyfish that actually makes this possible? When researchers looked at its genetics, they found something remarkable. This animal appears to have an unusually powerful toolkit for repairing its own DNA and protecting the very structures that normally break down as an organism ages. Studies have pointed to more than 1,000 genes connected to DNA repair and the aging process working in this creature. And crucially, when it resets itself, it seems to prioritize stability, carefully avoiding the kind of dangerous errors that usually creep in when cells rapidly rebuild. In other words, it doesn't just regrow, it regrows cleanly. That combination of resetting and self-repair is the real heart of the mystery. So if this jellyfish is basically immortal, why isn't the entire ocean overflowing with them? It's a fair question, and the answer brings us back down to Earth. Being able to reverse aging does not make you invincible. This jellyfish is tiny and incredibly fragile. In the wild, it still gets eaten by predators. It still gets caught in currents, struck by disease, or destroyed by changes in its environment. Its immortality is a trick against aging, not against everything else the ocean throws at it. So while it may never have to die of old age, death still finds most of them one way or another. True biological immortality exists in this creature, but survival is a whole different battle. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of this whole story. Nature found a way to defeat aging. It solved the one problem that every living thing struggles against. But it handed that gift to a creature so small and so delicate that it spends its endless life at the mercy of the sea. Immortality, in the body of something you could barely see with the naked eye. For centuries, humans have searched for a fountain of youth in myths and legends. And it turns out something close to it has been drifting quietly through the ocean the entire time. Not a fountain, not a potion. A jellyfish smaller than your fingernail, endlessly resetting its own life, holding a secret that scientists are only just beginning to unlock. We may never live forever, but by studying a creature that comes close, we just might learn how to live better and heal in ways we never thought possible. And that little jellyfish, quietly cheating death in the dark water, could end up teaching us the most human lesson of all. If this fascinated you, hit that like button and subscribe to Wild Codex, where we uncover the untold stories of Earth's most extraordinary creatures. And tell me in the comments, which animal should we explore next? I'd love to hear your suggestions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.